Hi there. So I've written an essay based on this question, and I'm just going to talk you through kind of the process of how I wrote it and how I came up with the ideas and all of that. So here we have the question statement. It says, people often think about creating an ideal society, but most of the time fail in making this happen. Now, when I initially read this, I was wondering about, in what situation would people have the opportunities to create these ideal societies? And it sounds like they're talking about people in general, like not necessarily people in the government, but just average citizens. And I was wondering, in what ways had they attempted to make an ideal society? And I just kind of got a little bit caught up in the question, and then I realized, well, look, it doesn't really matter. All I need to do is I need to come up with some ideas that are relevant and specific. So trying to get my head around the finer details of what's being described here, I realized it doesn't actually matter. So it did kind of catch me off guard. It is a tricky question, I'll give you that. But once you get down to it, look at what we're actually being asked to discuss. What is your opinion about an ideal society? So I don't need to actually respond too much to this question statement. What is my opinion about an ideal society, and how can we create an ideal society? Okay, so I have two questions. I'm going to write 2 body paragraphs in my essay. So by that I mean I have my introduction paragraph, and then the 2 larger paragraphs where I discuss my ideas. These are called body paragraphs. So here I've written 1 paragraph in response to my first essay, to the first question, and another paragraph in response to the next question. So when you get down to it, it's actually not that complicated. What is my opinion? What is your opinion of an ideal society? So basically, I need to come up with one idea that's relevant and specific. I need one idea where it's talking about exactly what this is discussed, and it's not too vague. So again, a vague idea would be, if I was to say something, I think the ideal society is a society that's very good. So, well, very good is too vague. Can you tell me why, in what way would something be very good? So what, in your mind, what does very good mean? Because many people might have different ideas about what would be very good. So that's what I need. And I need an idea that's answering this question, but specifically, not in a vague way. And then the second question, how can we create an ideal society? So again, I just need one idea. It must be relevant and specific. So when we get down to it, the initial confusion caused by the question statement actually disappears when we look at what we've been asked to do. Okay, so in the introduction paragraph here, my first job is to paraphrase the question. So basically, I need to take this question here. People often think about creating an ideal society, but most of the time fail in making this happen. I need another sentence with the same meaning. Now, as with every paraphrase, we're trying to change as many words as we can, but it's unlikely we will be able to change every word. So I've written, it is common for individuals to consider the creation of an ideal society, but they generally fail to implement this. And you can see, like, even changing a word from creating to the creation of, that's still a paraphrase. So yes, it's the same, it's another form of the same word, creating and creation. But that's fine, that's acceptable as a paraphrase. But things like this, an ideal society, I couldn't think of another word for an ideal society, so I had to copy it. Another word to say fail, I couldn't think of one, so I used the word fail. So again, don't put yourself under pressure to change every word. You're changing as many as you can, and you're copying the words that you need to copy. Okay. Now, in the next part of my introduction, the next part of my first paragraph, what I want to do is I want to outline that these are the things I will be discussing. I can put my main ideas there, or I can just say more generally that these are the things the essay will discuss. I've written, my opinion is that an ideal society would be one without crime. So there's my specific idea. I have included my specific idea. I like to do this, but it's not a specific requirement of the IELTS test. So, and one without crime. So in my mind, that's what an ideal society is. So you can see, as I've mentioned earlier on, I needed one idea that was specific and not vague. Relevant and specific. Specific is the opposite of vague. I got confused there. So it must be relevant and it must be specific. So here we have an idea that responds directly to the question, and it is a specific idea. So that's perfect. Then in response to the second part, how can we create an ideal society? I wrote, and I believe that education is the best way to create this outcome. Okay, so I've paraphrased the question and I've responded with my main ideas. Now, I'm not going to develop my main ideas here. I don't need to explain my main ideas. I don't need to, elaborate further on the information that I have provided. So that's enough. Paraphrase the question, respond to those two. Paraphrase the question statement here. And then I just wrote my main ideas from here. As I said, you don't have to write your main ideas. You might just say something like, in this essay, I will discuss what I believe is an ideal society and how we may be able to create such an outcome. It would be okay to just say what the essay will discuss. But like I mentioned, I prefer to have my main ideas in there. And again, I'm trying to vary my language as much as possible. It's a situation where I don't want to use the same words over and over again, but there will be some situations where I don't know another word, like for society, how am I going to paraphrase society? Well, I don't know another word for society. Let's even look, if we search, how many times did I use the word society in my essay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've used it as many times as I can, or excuse me, as many times as I need to. But I can paraphrase it by using referencing and substitution, like create this outcome. What outcome? Well, the one that I just mentioned earlier on, a society without crime. To implement this. So when I say implement this, what am I talking about? I'm talking about an ideal society. So we can avoid repeating the same words by using what's called referencing. So instead of using the same word again, I'm referring back to the thing I've already mentioned. This is an important part of your coherence and cohesion score as well. And besides that, trying to use a range of structures. Here I've just had two conjunctions joining independent clauses. So this would be acceptable to use these type of compound sentences, but we do need to use complex sentences as well. So if I just continued with basic sentence structures, that would be problematic for my score. But when we have even this, my opinion is that an ideal society would be one. So once I start using relative pronouns, this is actually a dependent clause. So there is a mixture. I have some dependent, some complex sentences, some simple sentence structures. They're being used accurately. So all of these things together are all considered by the examiner when deciding on your task response, coherence and cohesion, vocab and grammar scores. Okay. So now I'm going to have one paragraph responding to my first idea that a society is one without crime. Now I'm going to repeat that idea again in my first sentence. So restate your idea. That's always going to be the first part of your body paragraph, because the reader should be able to read the first sentence and say, okay, I know exactly what this paragraph is about. That's just the convention of academic writing in English, where we always tell the reader what we're talking about first, and then we develop it. But I know in a lot of Asian countries where you kind of provide all the evidence first and then arrive at the main idea at the end of the paragraph, but that's not how we do it in academic writing in English. So we start with the main idea. So here I said, my idea of an ideal society is one without crime, so that people don't need to fear for their safety or the safety of their loved ones. Okay. Now I'm going deeper into this idea. So the rest of my paragraph is going to be developing that one idea. I'm going to be talking about this and nothing else. I can explain that idea. I can give examples of that idea. I can talk about the results of that idea. Whatever you want to say, as long as you continue to focus on your idea, you must focus on your idea. You can't start talking about other aspects of, like, maybe, if you think an ideal society would be one that's safe and one that everybody is prosperous. Well, if you said you're going to talk about safety and you start talking about something else later, but that's not okay. You have to every part of your development must be about your idea, and it must be about what the question asked you to discuss, which is an ideal society. So to develop this idea, I said, when there is the possibility of being assaulted or robbed on any given day, people are never truly happy. So a society where crime is non-existent would allow people to live with a sense of peace that is currently not possible. So I'm explaining why I believe this is an ideal society. So I'm trying to convince the reader that not just that this is my idea and you should accept my idea, but why my idea is a good idea. This is why my idea makes sense. So I'm explaining why this is the key factor to an ideal society. Okay, and then further development. This can be seen in the fact that so many people have security systems in their homes, as they are constantly concerned about the potential for their homes to be burgled and their family members to be hurt by the invaders. So here's further evidence. This is an example of why we cannot be happy in a society, or why a society where crime exists is not an ideal society. So I'm just trying to back up the idea that an ideal society is one without crime. And I'm just trying to reinforce that idea by giving examples of how when we have crime, it's not a suitable place or suitable environment to live in. Now, one thing I see here that I'm not too happy with is the line between the paragraph isn't very evident. So I think it would be clearer if I just left a nice one line between each paragraph. You know, in this situation, it's quite clear already. So I'm actually going to add lines in there just to make it much easier for the examiner to identify where each paragraph starts and ends. Now, ideally, when we have when we have two body paragraphs in an essay, so we're discussing two ideas, I'm going to write about 100 words for each idea. So you can see here, I've written 109 words in this paragraph. So that's a good length. So you want to aim for about 100 words per idea, roughly, when you have two ideas. If there are 3 ideas, you're going to have about 70 words per idea. And if there are 4 ideas, you're going to have about 50 words per idea. So this essay, I went with just one idea for each question. So 2 ideas in total. So I'm aiming to write roughly 100 words in each of the body paragraphs. The second body paragraph here is 103, so about the right length there as well. Okay, so now in this second body paragraph, I will be discussing my second idea. So the second question asked, how can we create an ideal society? In my introduction, I said, I believe that education is the best way to create this outcome. So now, in this body paragraph 2, that's the idea I'm discussing and developing. Again, I'm going to repeat that main idea in the first sentence. To create such a society, the key lies in education. So there we go. I'm establishing what this paragraph is about. It's about my second idea. I've already said what my second idea is in the introduction. I'm just repeating it here. So we don't need anything new. We just need to make sure the reader is very clear about what to expect next. They're expecting me to discuss this idea. Now, as I said when we were looking at the previous paragraph, everything I'm going to write about here is why education is the key to creating such a society. If I start talking about something else like, maybe the government investing in the economy or, government doing work on developing the economy, it's okay if I wanted to have 2 ideas and I had, 2 ideas in my paragraph, but I'm not discussing 2 ideas here. I'm only discussing one. So if I go off topic, that's a problem. Right. So for the rest of the paragraph, I need to explain to you, the reader, why education is key. So I said this. Through education, children of all backgrounds can be taught the importance of living in harmony with one another. But if we leave this to parents, only the children of people with high moral values will learn these crucial principles. So what I'm saying here is, in most societies, values are taught to the children by their parents. But that only works if the parents are already have these values. So what I'm saying is if we can teach it in schools, then instead of some people learning it and other people not learning it, in this situation, absolutely everybody's going to learn it. So this is why education is the key to creating the type of society that I have that I have described in the previous paragraph. Again, look at the range of vocabulary. If I need to use a word again, I have no problem reusing the word. Like a lot of people, a lot of students will see the word children and they'll say, oh, that's too easy, I should try and use other words. Or they'll see the word people and they'll say, oh, well, I've used the word people earlier in the essay already, so I shouldn't use this word again. They start creating these complications where they're trying to avoid using the words they need. It's a bad idea. If you need a word and that's going to be the word that will help you communicate as clearly as possible, that's the word you should use. But there's plenty of words between to show how how wide my range of vocab is. Living in harmony. This is a strong collocation. These words are used together. I'm using it in the correct context and I'm using it accurately. High moral values. So to know that high moral values has this meaning and to be able to use it correctly. To know that the word with is used with high moral values. To be able to use the correct preposition. That's part of your collocation and shows that you have good shows that you have a wide range of vocab and a good knowledge of how to use it accuracy. For our coherence and cohesion, we have things like this: through such a society, the one that I already mentioned earlier. Your coherence and cohesion score would also benefit from using words like but, furthermore, and, as. All of these cohesive devices are also part of your coherence and cohesion score. And then the fact that I've given you a main idea that's relevant and specific. If my main ideas are relevant and specific, that brings me to a band 6 for task response. And then if I develop it more, that'll bring me to a 7. And then if I develop it more, that will bring me to an 8. And as long as it's all developed fully and makes sense, that's what brings me to a band 9. So you're starting with ideas that are relevant and specific to get you a band 6 in task response, and then the more appropriate development that you're adding, the closer you're getting to your band 9 in task response. As I mentioned, coherence and cohesion is all of the cohesive devices and the referencing. And then with the grammar, it's using a range of structures. Some of them need to be complex and that you're using them accurately. So everything so far shows that I'm on track for a high band score, definitely aiming towards band 9 at this point. Of course, the rest of the development must be suitable as well. So at this point, like what I've written so far is likely to bring me to a 7 or an 8, and now I'm pushing myself up to that band 9 here. So to continue developing why education is key to creating a society without crime, I said, furthermore, the source of many criminal activities is poverty, and the best way to alleviate this source of crime is through education, as a good education will allow people to get jobs that pay enough money for them to pay their bills and put food on their tables without needing to do anything illegal. So again, everything here is about why education will create a society with no crime. It's explaining how this is the best way to create this outcome. And everything I've said is about education, and everything I've said is about creating the society that I already suggested earlier. Okay, so those are the body paragraphs finished. So I've written my introduction, one paragraph responding to the first question, another paragraph responding to the second question, and now all I need to do is write my conclusion. My conclusion is very straightforward. It's as simple as this. You need to repeat your main ideas and repeat your opinion. So more likely your opinion would be in questions like if they asked you, do you agree or disagree? And you said, I agree. Well, you need to say that again. This particular question didn't ask us directly for an opinion. It was more, what do we think would be an ideal society and how can we create that? So it's really just the main ideas that we need to repeat here. But in general, your conclusion will repeat your main ideas and your opinion if you've been asked for one. Okay, so this one says, in conclusion, my opinion of an ideal society is one where no crimes are committed, and I believe that the most effective way of reaching this goal is through education. So again, just repeating my ideas, and of course it is quite repetitive. Like for example, I've mentioned my first idea here and at the start of my first body paragraph and in the introduction. So I've mentioned that same idea 3 times. So it does feel repetitive. Well, it is repetitive, but that's just the structure that's required in the IELTS test. So don't overthink it. If it seems unusual, I appreciate why you would think that, but that's just what an IELTS essay is supposed to look like. So yeah, in terms of task response, main ideas are appropriate because they're relevant and specific, and they've both been developed fully. I wrote about 100 words for each of those ideas, so that's my band 9. Coherence and cohesion, I'm using a range of cohesive devices. I am using referencing appropriately to refer back to the things that I've already discussed. Even words like one here to refer to an ideal society. Again, this is all part of your coherence and cohesion. Wide range of vocab, not worrying about using the same words again if I need to, but a wide enough range of vocab within to refer to the topic being discussed, and that vocab being used accurately and with flexibility and precision to communicate my ideas very precisely and clearly. And then with grammar, there is a range of both complex and simple sentence structures, all being used accurately, no mistakes whatsoever. This is what we're looking at for a band 9 in grammar. So that is why that essay there would get a band 9. And obviously, when you're preparing for the IELTS test, you might be able to write a really strong essay, but can you do it in 40 minutes? That's very important. So once you're capable of writing an essay of a very high quality and high enough to get the score you need, make sure you can do that in 40 minutes, and that will ensure that you can get your score in the real test. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you've learned a lot from this and will help you with writing your own essays in future. Take care. Bye-bye.